Hi there. Once again, I stumbled upon a concept or an invention that is actually pretty interesting for concentrated solar power. Very, very interesting for concentrated solar power because it could, let's say, increase the efficiency of concentrated solar power systems to 50%, which is quite a lot. Usually now you have Stirling engines in the focal point of a concentrated lens, Fresnel lens or whatever it is, and then you basically have your efficiency of generation of power using that method, which is about 33 to 40%. You can add to that with quite a surprising technology. Basically, the source of this discovery of this technology, which I didn't invent or whatever, was wondering about these old radio tubes, because you have in these old radio tubes you have a glowing wire, and then you have the whole device, and of course what happens is that the glowing wire emits electrons. They float through the vacuum towards the anode or the cathode or whatever it is, are influenced by magnetic fields or electric fields, and that's what the thing does, the radio tube does. What I wondered about was, okay, so if you heat something up, electrons come out. Why can't you do that in the focal point of a concentrator, and then have electric current come out of it? There's not a solar cell that simply a piece of metal will do, or anything will do. Actually, it's a very good example of a piece of metal that emits something because it's heated up, and that's of course the normal incandescent, and hopefully I pronounce it right, light bulb, which was invented by Mr. Edison. And it turns out that this effect that I'm talking about, which is also called the thermionic effect, because they didn't know about electrons in, let's say, 1900 or 1800 such and such, but they did know about the thermionic effect because they were heating up things. Another name for it is the Edison effect, because Edison made a big step in understanding it and using it. The thermionic effect is simply that if you heat a metal up, stuff basically escapes from it, and those are ions, which is, let's say, metal vapor, and electrons. And this was noticed, that if you heat up, stuff comes from it. Something that Edison noticed was when he was looking at the filament of his light bulbs, that there was kind of a sediment or deposition on one side of it and not on the other side. Probably on the positive side, that's what I guess. And he tried to figure it out, so he made a little electrode in and he also, I guess, noticed that there was some, let's say, voltaic effect. So he made a little plate that he could charge positively and negatively in the tube, and he discovered this effect where you have electrons escaping from a filament, and then they float through the vacuum, and then if the piece of metal is positive, then it's absorbed, and if the piece of metal is negative, then it's not absorbed. So you get a different type of current in the bulb. So, long story short, Thomas Edison invented the diode, the radio tube diode, which was of course perfected not by him but by other people, which is amazing. Which basically makes him responsible for well, not only the incandescent light bulb, but as a spin-off of the inventing this of computers and all kinds of control devices that we have from the beginning, and after we had them in the beginning in the 19th century, 1900s, then of course people were saying, okay, we want to do that same thing but more efficiently. You first have to discover that you can do it. His thermionic effect turns out to be also very usable with concentrated solar power, because on the wiki page you read about thermionic effect, and you go to the bottom and it says photonic enhanced thermionic effect, or something like that. And those are the guys at Harvard that basically took this idea and say, okay, what if we heat it up with sunlight, a piece of metal or a piece of material, then it will also emit electrons. If we catch those electrons, then we can have a current. So there's guys at Stanford that basically are working on PEAT, as they call it, and I think that it's a little bit misunderstood, and basically it runs the risk to be covered up, to be kept out of the market by the carbon credit interest. There's always three methods. One is that you misunderstand it, so you say, okay, somebody comes I've invented a new super technology. Oh yeah, it's probably what we already know. No, it's not. Well, probably it is. No, it's not. It can go on forever. That's one way to keep somebody out. Second way is to say, okay, that's brilliant. Let's patent it and let's put it in the closet, like Shell did with solar panels. Thanks, Shell. Burn in hell. But third way is to keep people trying to figure out how to optimize it for decades and decades. That's what happened to simply mirror foil for solar concentrate, for instance. That people spent $300 million in the Department of Energy between the 1970s and the 1990s making something that is equivalent to a plastic bottle with some vapor depositive aluminum foil on it. That's what they basically invented for $300 million. That's a super waste. But anyway, so these guys at Stanford, they might be in scientific stasis, as you can call it. Once they get an invention, they might be captured by the patent system. But there's no denying, and of course, in general, this whole technology is unknown because I hadn't heard of it. I only found out about it when I was basically trying to invent something, you could say. Well, of course, that's not what I was doing, but I don't, let's say, deserve that type of recognition at all. But basically, it's the same thing as with the glass revolution. I was basically thinking about, okay, so it's hot, you can melt stuff, why can't you melt sand? If you can melt sand, what can you do? You can make glass. If you can make glass, then you can make a lot that is very useful without any carbon input, so without any control of the financial system. You basically you need your big Fresnel lens, you go to the desert. What I did yesterday with the Fresnel lens is demontage or disassemble electronics, which is a very useful thing to be doing in Africa, where you have all the electronic waste dumped in Nigeria or wherever it is, and you give a guy a Fresnel lens costing about $33 and a pair of welding goggles, and you can put him outside on a bench and he can be disassembling electronics all day, and that's very valuable because these electronic pieces, they can be reused, they're very expensive to make. Actually, not if you buy them in bulk, but if you're investing something in Africa, somebody in Africa, I need a rectifying diode or a microcontroller, you won't find it anywhere. It's lying around there and you can use it for its own good. But anyway, long story short, this PEET technology exists. I think that it is now in scientific stasis. That's my very quick conclusion. It's not being advocated or basically broadcasted that it exists, but it does make concentrated solar power plants competitive with gas power plant, which is a very weird thing to say in my mind, but anyway, the yield of a concentrated solar power dish can be 50%. Talk about one other thing, which is MTech. I say, okay, please read the article, look at it, think, okay, if you like that, it's something you probably didn't know. If you are going to use concentrated solar power with Fresnel lenses, for instance, then this is a really cheap way to get a lot of power, because the Fresnel lenses are made out of plastic, which costs next to nothing, and this PEET device will be very small and very thin, so it will also cost very little. But another technology that was invented a while back by NASA in their deep space missions in order to find an energy source for these deep space crafts, and subsequently was hidden from public by misunderstanding it. I basically found some communiques about it, and they were interpreting it differently. Is so-called MTech, which is and I'm not sure, anionic metal, blah, blah, blah. What it is you're pushing a metal gas through a barrier, and as you do that, it loses its electrons. It's a process that works at very high temperatures, for instance those that you reach with a solar concentrator, and it's demonstrated it works. It's a very stable type of device. You make it once and you heat it on one side, and you have this gas circulating through it and condensing and all the stuff with sodium. It's not used, but it is a technology that can be very cheap, and that directly, just like this PEET technology, directly in one step transfers heat into electricity, which is what we would like, apparently, for some reason. Anyway, I hope you find this interesting. This is my work for today. I have to try to fix all my laptops and cameras and all this stuff. But check it out, and if you want to support this, if you want to, let's say, join the Helio Nods, the community of people that look into concentrated solar power in a more hands-on way, then please send me a message and support us. Thanks for listening.